In this debate, I'm going to prove to you three things. Number one, why I should stop coming to future ADIs, since it's my third consecutive going to the final. Right? Secondly, I'm going to also, representing Heon from Team On Intrusive, I'm going to provide to you the exact harm that comes this motion and significantly how it deprives the people's choice to freely opt in and opt out from seeing what they want to see. Secondly, I'm going to also prove to you how this actually deprives women, actually objectifies women at the end of the day. My second speaker will also talk about something brilliant, as much as he did so far. What are we talking about sexist imageries and advertisements? Advertisements, as we all know, TV commercials, and there'd be banners on like postings and whatnot. Sexist imagery, exclusively I'm going to talk about image that contains distorted or discriminatory images towards women or men. For example, if a like beer advertisement promotes women having big boobs and big asses on the seashore drinking beer, obviously that is something that actually contains these kind of like sexist imageries that all women have these kind of hot bodies and whatnot, which leads to agony of men who don't actually get laid throughout having those products at the end of the day. So what I'm going to prove to you is two things. Number one, I'm going to talk about the purpose of advertisements and why the government has a duty and actually has the right to censor some kind of contents that show upon these things. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how sexist imagery objectifies women, and due to the over-competition where every corporation is actually forced to have those kind of sexist imageries, I'm going to tell you why women are actually less well off at the end of the day. So let's go on to the first argumentation. We think that advertisement, as we all know, is a mechanism to inform the consumers in terms of why their product is superior than others. Basically, they show the pros and cons of these advertisements. They actually show why their product is actually worth buying. That actually what happens in the status quo is that because these people want to actually promote a significant amount of profit out of it, they actually use very provocative means. No, thank you. But we think that actually harms a specific segment in a society. We think that freedom to watch and enjoy an advertisement also has to entail the right to opt out when I don't want to see those kind of advertisements at the end of the day. For example, if I don't want to see women actually being naked on the beach, actually enjoying their lives having a beer, actually I have also the right to exactly not see those kind of imageries at the end of the day. So basically this opt-in and opt-out principle has to be upheld when it comes to these kind of advertisements, especially when these imageries are very provocative in the first place. However, it's inevitably the consumers inevitably watch these kind of contents because if you look at how TV commercials are composed, is that they actually have random images in between the shows. So basically, they have a very cliffhanger and then they move on to the images. So all of a sudden, I've been focusing on the television, and boom, I have no choice but to opt out of the TV. My only option is to actually walk away the room, right? But actually, that cannot happen because the TV show is so exciting or whatnot. Basically, when that kind of imagery is already provocative and kind of like harming my choice to not see those kind of things, we think that's harmful. How can I guarantee that people who want to opt into the choices? We also have imageries like things like pornography. We can actually see real life women actually having those provocative images. We think that's quite fine for the government to do so because you actually have a chance to not watch or download porn. You actually have a choice not go to clubs or to bars to see hot women at the end of the day. When it comes to commercials, you simply have no options but to watch them because you're forced by the commercials at the end of the day. That's why in case of Abercrombie, we actually as a government ban people for having very racist and how white superiorism images. But also we have in case of medicines, we don't portray kids dying in the street because of this lack of medicine. It's all consistent with the principle in terms of if I don't want to see kids dying on the street, if I don't want to see racist comments on TV, I should have an option to opt out. That is the reason why government intervenes in this case and actually has a say regarding what kind of contents that they want to show their citizens and what kind of contents that they should not show their citizens anyway. Now probably oppositions talk about choice of these corporate rights and whatnot. Also those things will be guaranteed. We will prove to you a mechanism how these corporations will still be able to survive, and my deputy will prove to you actually better for these corporations to survive with this model. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the sexist imagery, how it objectifies women. As I briefly mentioned, basically what you're saying is, once you drink this hot, this cool beer, you will actually have, become the hot guy laying on the beach watching a lot of hot women, right? Also have the images in terms of how all these cool women purchase these kind of things. For example, you have to be this hot enough to actually, have access to these goods. Basically, all of our consumers are hot women or men like these people. Why is it bad? It's precisely using a specific person or a specific gender in order to persuade each other. It's basically simply saying, because of this hot image, you're basically a tool of promotion is being used. Why is this kind of promotion bad? It's because number one, your product in itself usually in most of the cases have no relevance to these kind of gender related sexist imagery related natures anyways. So basically, in a moment, basically they have nothing to do with it, but because for the sake of catching people's attention, because people know that they know for a fact that men during 11 p.m. and 12 p.m. like to watch those kind of hot images, they intentionally and deliberately insert those images so that they can actually catch the attention of those people. Yes.
Okay, so if the advertisements are not allowed to attach those kind of images, are you going to say that adverts should always only list up the functions that particular product has?
No. For significantly excluding just the part when you actually abuse people in terms of how you portray their image to be very sexual or whatnot. Basically, still comparing your other in terms of how Apple and Samsung does, they don't simply have any advertisement regarding sexuality or any images that are quite seen in that manner. We tell you that promotion and advertisement can still happen under our logic without using those things. What's the problem? When we see one company within an industry starting to have these sexual imagery, it starts a slope where actually other companies are only inclined to do so. Why? Basically, if one company, company A, gains popularity among the men in terms of how they portray sexual images, and actually their advertisement are successful, thus their profit increase, other company B and C also have no option but to opt into those strategies. That's why in case of when one company actually advertises, the other company actually has to advertise, counter-advertise in terms of proving why they are better. But in case of when company A is only advertising our sexual images is the best way to go, B doesn't simply have a way because those things are not catchy enough. Those images that they're portraying are not persuasive enough to people because people are only caring about how hot the actor or actress is in the scene. That's why actually in the case of these kind of things, corporations are not only forced, but actually they have no choice but to they have no choice to opt out of the situation when they stop wanting to have those advertisements with sexist imageries at the end of the day. So basically what we're saying is that corporations do not have a choice in terms of but to objectify women continuously again and again and again, let it also men in some rare cases. The problem is basically the government does have a right in terms of guaranteeing that women are not objectified. That's why in case of when women are harassed in their workplaces, government protects them to actually be objectified. Basically if they see their boss actually harassing them and looking at them in a very inappropriate way, the government can actually have a right, and the woman can have a right in terms of claiming towards the government that I am being sexually harassed. In this case, it's a general offense to all female existing in a society because we're just giving a gender stereotype that this is the hot woman that we ought to abuse through our advertisements. Mr. and Madam Speaker, we think that this debate essentially is about how can we have better quality of advertisement, but moreover, it's actually guaranteeing the people's choice to freely opt in and opt out. We're proud to propose.
Okay, I thank the Prime Minister for his speech and now invite the Leader of the Opposition to continue on debate.
All his explanation is not unique to this case. We are not this government which protects individuals' emotion because it is subjective to every individual. It's impossible to protect everything. According to the logic, those who do not like pets, those who want to protect the animal rights and those who do not want to see the advertisement of the pets also be given the rights not to see those kind of things. And we say that kind of subjective emotion is just very, very limited cases and very, very small compared with tangible benefit which companies can provide to every individual and to have more choices by seeing that kind of images. And we think this debate is not only about beer or so forth, but also the adult video or such kind of strong images by using sexist images. They're just talking about moderate one, but we have to argue more hardcore one, which is also the context of the debate. I'm going to talk about two things in my speech. First, I'm going to talk about why should the corporation right be given top priority, especially in this case, to enlighten the people, to give them more choices to lead to the better decision. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how this motion deprives individual choices, especially for those women, to actualize themselves by showing up in that images of the advertisement, and that kind of control by the government and manipulation of the notion can be damaging to the society. So, but before that, a couple points to rebuttal to the previous speaker. So, firstly, he somehow mentioned that people have freedom not to see things they do not like, but it is already rebutted in my introduction. It is subjective to every individual, and we cannot say only because of protecting, no thank you, that kind of subjective feelings. We are here to protect those, we can intervene that kind of thing. Of course, no, there's no justification only because of subjectivity to intervene as a government. As a result, their case is so too general and out of this debate in the first place. No thank you. He gave us some examples like kids are dying in terms of medical advertisement or racist comment and so forth. Firstly, we are happy to include those kind of images if you think it's fun, if you think it's problematic. But we say those companies have no incentive to use that because once they use that, they can be given strong criticism. Their products won't be sold. But compare with those kind of thing, that companies have a strong incentive to use sexist images because there's lots of people who demand that. In those cases, we couldn't think that it's problematic. So somehow, next he said, that kind of products or advertisement can brainwash the people, lead to the, irrational decision or manipulated decision because they easily connect the product function and the racist image, sexist images, and it is problematic. But we must, Mr. Chair, we couldn't hear any distinction between celebrities or any kind of famous people. Even those people can provide some information by drinking the beer. Even those cases, you can buy that beer, but there's no distinction on that point. So lastly, he somehow mentioned people are forced to opt in to use these sexist images, like the case of companies. That kind of thing is problematic. But of course, companies are not so stupid. If they don't think it's important, they won't use that. They look for other population, other generation, which demand their own product. In that case, his argument is ridiculous. Lastly, he mentioned it is objectification of women. It is problematic. He's denying the premise of our society. In our society, the already equal rights for every individual woman is achieved. We think in those cases, of course, there's some punishment for these people on that kind of occasions. Only because watching the sexist images, you won't commit crimes. Because you can make distinction between TV and reality. And that kind of calculus can be out of this debate. No, thank you. So, as our first argument, why should companies be given top priority, especially in this case? We think free market system is a very important concept of our society, and the state has to respect the liberty of every individual company. Why is that so? Firstly, as I told you, liberty is the most important and fundamental concept. By making it guaranteed, companies can pursue their happiness, their profit, and can trickle down to the citizens or the workers. No, thank you. But secondly, because of the existence of this liberty, there's more competitions, and we say it benefits more citizens because citizens will start to have more information about that product, more knowledge about that product, or more images. And especially we say to show things, no thank you, the way they like is mostly important. Why is that so? Firstly, we think it is one way of self-actualization for these companies. By using that kind of images, no thank you, like using the Photoshop or so forth, they can formulate their own providing methods. You want to provide some product in this kind of ways. So that kind of ways can be only done by having the liberty. That kind of self-actualization, thank you, is important. But secondly, we say people will start to understand, or customers will start to have more knowledge by seeing those images, like the case of adult video or even the beer. That consumers can tell what kind of product I'm going to have. And by knowing that images, they can differentiate with other products. We think that benefits the society, benefits the citizens, and maximize their own choices. It is so beneficial. Yes, opening.
Do you support actors having sex in advertisement because people want to see it?
In your case, we say we're happy to support those kind of things. But we say if the, companies won't use that because it can be given so strong criticism. In those cases, we think that is out of debate. We think that's out of debate. So second case. How this defines individual choices. So we say the package adult video or any advertisement or label or the CD jacket or anything. We think lots of images are there and people's choices are given there. It is so important and beneficial for people. Why is that so? Firstly, we say it's one way of self-actualization for every individual. By having that kind of images, they can actualize on no thank you themselves. They can provide their own feelings, they can provide their own self by that kind of image, and people can feel satisfaction by having that kind of advertisement for the society. We think that kind of thing is beneficial for that people. But secondly, we say it leads to the open discourse. According Even if we accept your policy, if that companies will start to use that sexist images, people will start to criticize. In some cases, we say it listed more mature decision, more mature notion in that society by discussing whether it's good or not. So ultimately we say, firstly, states should not decide the way people like. States should not decide the way people act. We think the liberty is a very important concept, and every individual choices and company's choices have to be respected. But secondly, we say state mustn't control or manipulate the notion or the discourse. By taking this motion, the sexist images will be ripped out from the society, but it leads to also the breaking down of discourse in that society, and people won't be benefited by that. So, Mr. Chair, the government side is only protecting the emotion, which is so subjective and out of this debate, because government is not the actor which can protect every individual's emotion, but what we have to prioritize more tangible self-actualization and the company's profit or so forth. That's what we oppose.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his speech, and now invite the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the debate.
Several rebuttals before we move on to the substantives. Firstly, they say in the status quo there are a lot of advertisement that is harming the emotions of the individuals. So even if the sexist imagery advertisement may harm the emotion of the people, it is actually okay to do so. We have several responses for that. Firstly, we say there is a practical harm for the sexist imagery when people cannot have option to go out from that. What is the harm? Firstly, because people are materializing women, it is actually harm. Even people in the status quo do not have any perception toward a specific gender, can actually formulate these perception and see these women as an entity who actually have a sexist imagery rather than as they are in the status quo. We say it is actually bad for the government to recognize that these people can materialize this woman by advertisement to let it be. And secondly, we say that sexist imagery is actually harming the parental right. Why is that so? We say in the status quo, parents have the right to educate their children based on their will to do so. We say they actually do not want their children to be exposed in this sexist imagery, but we say in their model, as these people cannot opt out from this advertisement, but rather have no option to watch this advertisement, we say these children can be affected through this sexist imagery. We say it is not a matter of the emotion, but rather it is actually practical harm. Therefore, government should regulate these things. Yes.
In case of child education, right? If you see advertisement which does have sexual imagery, advertisements do not actually emphasize these sexual imageries. They emphasize the products. Are you aware of those emphasis?
Like the advertisement in, for example, in Korea regarding, beer, it is actually not emphasizing the information regarding the beer, but rather it shows that they can actually have hot women when they are drinking these beers. We say it is actually not emphasis on the information of the product, but rather emphasis on the gender, and we say it is actually practically harming also to the children. Regarding rebuttal. Regarding the company, they have actually liberty. Companies do have a liberty to pursue happiness of their individuals. We say that this liberty is not absolute thing to begin with, and this liberty is actively violated when we see the harm in the status quo. For example, the cigarette companies do not even have an opportunity to advertise their the products in the televisions or in the during the movies, because the government recognized the advertisement and the harm of the advertising this cigarette, and even if they do have a liberty to pursue happiness, it is actually actively violated because to pursue the better good. We say we are pursuing the better good because we're actually making these people to have more options and making these people to not materialize this woman. And secondly, regarding depriving the individual choices, They say it is beneficial because it is the only way to self-actualize. We say it is wrong to contextualize in that way because women in the status quo do not self-actualize by seeing the advertisement that is showing hot body of them. These people in the status quo who want to, they want them to be treated as they are in the status. For example, in the company, they do not want to be the hot woman, but rather they want to be self-actualized by the bosses, by their ability. We say this opportunity is gone under their model because people now have a perception toward this woman because of this materializing this woman. And secondly, they say open discourse will be there, it is beneficial. When you see the criticism will be there under your model, why would you pursue for it? We say it is actually harming, when there is a harm, a prominent harm coming from your model, we say there is no reason to pursue for it to begin with. Even there is a discourse, that discourse is actually depriving because it is actually discourse regarding the woman, whether it is good for them to actually be materialized. And we say that topic itself is actually harming the specific gender. No, thank you. Our substantive is clear. Firstly, we say our model is good for companies in the long term, which is directly clashing to the point from the opposition side. And secondly, the model of the status quo is actually harming the consumers. Our model can solve it. Why good for the companies? Because we see the status quo, no thank you, companies do not have options but to go for the sexist imagery. Why? They cannot put informative information in the advertisement, but they choose to go for the sexist imagery because firstly, it is very catchy and it is actually affecting in the status quo. And secondly, there is a competition within the companies saying that it is actually showing that when you use this sexist imagery, you can actually be, your product will be sold more than the status quo. The harm coming from that is that we firstly cannot properly inform people. The companies loses incentive to be more innovative in terms of making the advertisement, but just be one of the advertisement in the status quo. The model that we're pursuing is actually benefiting in the long run because these companies can be more innovative in terms of making advertisement, and more importantly, these companies can better inform individuals, which is actually very beneficial because these people, these companies can be chosen from the consumers based on the efforts that they made and based on the products that they have, rather than the catching advertisement that they have. No, thank you. Regarding harming consumers, why the status quo is harming the consumer? It is also clashing to the point of the leader of opposition. We say status quo is harming because there is no informed choice to begin with. Why is that so? Because there is no informed choice made in terms of deciding the products. Rather than in the status quo, rather than buy products based on the benefit that these products have, based on the information that they saw from the advertisement, they just remember the catching and sexist imagery to buy certain beers, to buy certain products. We say it is actually harming because they cannot actually make a better choice, and it is made under our model because they can decide the product based upon the pros and cons of the products between several beers or several products that they have, and there is a legitimate reasons to choose certain product rather than just catching imageries. We say government have responsibility to actually make consumers to make better informed choices, better choices, and when it is not made under their model, we say government has responsibility to ban it. So we prove to you how it is harming because people do not have options to go out, and secondly, it is materializing the woman, and thirdly, even for the companies, our model is beneficial. So we are proud to propose it.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his speech. Now I invite the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to continue our address.
Okay, so Mr. Speaker, so there's a fundamental assumption coming from the government side. It is that by seeing those naked women or half-naked women, women are going to be offended. But we think it's totally wrong. When we see those kind of advertisements, we women don't feel like that. We are living in a world, already the sex is liberalized, right, Mr. Speaker? So, please take an example of, for example, Saudi Arabia or these kind of Middle Eastern countries. In these kind of countries, we say that because women have to hide their skins, therefore it has to be fixed and so forth, right, Mr. Speaker? So all these kind of examples prove that being open to sex, having sex in the public is not a bad thing at all, but I think rather the right for the woman, and it's going to push forward. And moreover, we think it's having these kind of images is the fundamental right of these kind of companies. Therefore, we would like to oppose this motion. So I would like to basically talk about two things in my speech. Firstly, I would like to talk about which paradigm is going to be better for the consumers. Secondly, I would like to talk about how these sex is going to become a taboo and the normalization of sex liberty is going to be infringed and how it's going to be harm the women. But before we a couple of rebuttals against the opening government. Firstly, the opening government main problem about how women are materialized because of these kind of advertisements. Well, we think it's totally ridiculous in the first place. We never ever, for example, overlap the woman beside you or your mother or your sister with the woman in your advertisement because we recognize the fact that things occurring in the advertisements is something that is fictional and it's not fictional. Humans are not as stupid as the other side have characterized. And secondly, in terms of the parental rights, they talked about how this existence of sex adverts are going to have bad effects upon children. Firstly, we didn't see any critical, materialistic effect upon children coming from the other side of the house. Secondly, we think that it's rather better to have these kind of sex adverts in the public sphere because we think that if for sex education, it's better to have these kind of to get accustomed to this kind of sex liberty or sexual to have open sex. Why is that so? Because we think that it's better if children have consultation with their own parents in a casual manner about sex. If they, for example, have boyfriends and if they have sex and they happen to have a pregnant and so forth, in that case they always need to consult your own parents. And we think that in order to achieve this kind of thing, we shouldn't make the sex itself taboo. If we exclude everything like adverts of sexism out of this kind of public sphere, we're going to make it a taboo. We're going to prevent these children from having incentive to consult their sex, for example, the concerns about sex with their own parents because they will think that it is a wrong thing. It is a taboo, that it is same as hate speech or it is same as racism. It is something that is wrong to consult with. So we think that our paradigm is better in terms of sex education. So moving on to the issues about which one is better for the choices of the consumers themselves. So they talked about so the opening government said, okay, firstly, these under the status quo, people are undermine their own rational calculus to compare their own products because they have no information. But we think it's totally wrong in the first place, right, Mr. Speaker? Because these people are buying products with their own money, right, Mr. Speaker? In that sense, they won't viscerally react to these kind of images and suddenly buy these kind of products like an animal. We think that kind of thing won't happen in the first place, right, Mr. Speaker? And secondly, they talked about how these companies are going to one direction. They're all trying to use these kind of sexism adverts. But we think it's totally wrong in the first place because companies always try to differentiate themselves against other companies, right, Mr. Speaker? If one company is going one direction and doing using sexist adverts, in that case, the other companies will try to differentiate yourself from others because these companies recognize people will get accustomed to these kind of sexual images and these adverts won't become as effective as it used to be. So that kind of thing doesn't happen. But whether we think this motion is bad for these consumers, why is that so? Because we think that these consumers' pleasure of consuming something is not only coming from utilizing your own function of the product itself, but also we think that the consumers are also enjoying the image that is actually attached with these kind of products. By, for example, buying a car with an advert in which a sexy lady, for example, lies down on the car. In that case, it's by buying this kind of car, men can have this kind of satisfaction that I feel like I am being very much attractive and being able to be friends with these kind of beautiful women and that kind of pleasure. Or for example, by licking by these kind of images, we are increasing the amount of pleasure that these people, consumers, can actually have. So moving on to the substantive. Yes.
If you want to have pleasure, you're perfectly fine with other means such as pornography. People who don't want their kids or themselves to see these kind of things cannot opt out. What do you say to that?
So we think that there's fundamental assumption that there's a majority of the people, majority of the kids, majority of the women don't actually they don't actually like these kind of women like seeing these kind of women with naked body and so forth. But I think I've already my partner and I already refuted to this point by talking about how the society itself, the societal norm about sex itself had changed already. So moving on to the substantive issue about how these kind of women's rights are actually going to be rather infringed. So in the status quo, the women are allowed to be open to sex. Women are allowed to enjoy like being sexy or being attractive towards men, because we think that because we have achieved this world with a lot of advertisement or a lot of being open to sex itself. So and we think that being sexy or being attractive is also one of the choices that females can have, one of the important choices that females should enjoy. Right, Mr. Speaker? That's the very reason why we see a lot of females, for example, trying to wear very much sexy, for example, sexy swimsuits at beaches and so forth. But after taking this proposal, what's going to happen is that the sex itself is going to be a taboo in the society. Why is that so? Because we never ever see these kind of sexy ladies or in the advertisement. With this text itself, it's going to be something totally different from our own reality. So firstly, the woman will be hesitated to actually to become sexy or to resort to, for example, wear sexy clothes. The woman will feel that it is wrong for ourselves to become attractive and so forth. That is going to be the infringement of females' rights. And secondly, we think that the desire of the men to look for women or desire of the men to actually objectify women is rather going to be increased. Why is that so? Because what the male will think, because they are no longer normalized and not used to these kind of sexy things, what they'll think is that these being sexy lady or sexist stuff is something that you can never get in touch with in your real world. So what they will do is they will try to for example, search for what they will do is just they go onto the internet, they try to search these kind of websites in which the women are wrongly objectified. So we think that in that case, this motion is rather counterproductive to promote the females' rights, and for all these reasons we are extremely proud to support it.